screen. Okay. One second. Right. Cool. All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So my name is Taylor. I am a third-year medical student at Penn State Hershey. Um, it is a great honor to come talk about first gen in medicine here today. So first gen medicine is a club here on Hershey. So I'll be sort of highlighting the club and what we've been doing and what we want to see in the future as well. So I'll get this started. Okay, and we can see my screen, correct? Okay, well, I had a poll question, and if anyone would love to unmute and talk a little bit about these questions, how adequate do you feel current supports are for first gen students, students overall, and how important do you think peer networking is for first gen medical students, and do you think that existing resources for first gen medical students take intersectionality into consideration? And I apologize, the poll wasn't able to work, but if anyone would like to share a little bit, and if not, that's all right as well.
So Taylor, do you maybe want to take one at a time there as far as on a scale of 1 to 10? How
Yeah,
adequate do you feel current supporters are for first gen students?
yeah. And you know what we can do actually? So we can, I know there's the thumbs up button and the thumbs down, so we can just do the first one. And I know it's not the scale of 1 to 10, but like thumbs up being like more towards a lot of support or strongly agree, and thumbs down, not great support or strongly disagree. So we can start with that with the first question.
So to be clear, Taylor's asking to use the reactions at the bottom of your screen and give a thumbs up if you feel that there's strong support for first gen students, or a thumbs down if you're more inclined to feel that there's not as much support. And we do, even though the chat is disabled in the Zoom, we do have the chat in Whova. So if anybody's logged into this session in Whova, I'm monitoring that chat as well. But I saw some thumbs up.
Okay. Okay.
Take a look there at the second bullet.
Yeah. Second one is, how important do you think peer networking is for first gen medical students?
So as people are filtering in, we're using the reactions at the bottom of your screen. Thumbs up for a strong correlation, or thumbs down for not so strong. Answering the middle bullet point there, how important do you think peer networking is for first gen medical students? And we do have a comment, Taylor. Jamie shared, I work with a lot of pre-health students, and peer networking is a huge part of how they get information about preparing for graduate school. I can only imagine it would be critical once in medical school.
Thank you. Okay, and then for sake of time, we can just talk about this third bullet as well. In terms of intersectionality, how do you all think current resources are taking that into consideration? Okay, that's okay. Okay, I can get started. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Learning objectives, I won't read all of them, but basically through today's chat, kind of want to highlight how First Gen in Medicine got started as a club on campus, what we've done so far, the importance of this networking space for students, and also future ways that we can better support students as well. And of course, taking into consideration of intersectionality within this framework. And again, if there's any questions or any comments, feel free to stop me and we can chat as well. Okay. All right. So how did this all started? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. So when I first came in as a first year medical student, I was very lost. I was very intimidated. I thought I was doing everything wrong. And as we know, imposter syndrome is a thing. And I felt that very much coming in. All I can hear was people talking about, this how to study for this certain organ block. I keep hearing these things called step one, step two, and then out of nowhere there's a step three. And I was just like, what are we talking about here? What's going on? And so as my way to sort of figure out how to navigate med school, I went to this event by the Surgical Diversity Task Force, which is led by Dr. Amanda Cooper here, who was also who became the faculty advisor for First Gen in Medicine. So during that event, we shared a lot of similar stories with my peers. Everyone was confused. Everyone felt really frustrated in just not knowing how to navigate these terms, these um, like knowledge that we were supposed to know, but also scared to ask what those mean because we want to feel like we belong in this space. And within one of these like huddles, I met a student was a couple years older than me. Jasmine was also a key player in creating First Gen in Medicine. And she mentioned the term the hidden curriculum in medical school. And I was like, come on, really? Another term that I don't understand. And that's something I need to figure out as well. Um, and so what proved to be really helpful was mentorship. So she helped me along the way with, big sort of milestones in terms of like exams. We have these things called OSCE, so like clinical physical exams. So many of these big milestones, she was able to sort of help me navigate through these points, so I don't feel as like stressful and frustrated. And that's something we wanted to expand to students who have similar background as I am. So we started recruiting. I shared these thoughts with my friends, and my friends spread these words to their friends, and then people started coming up to me that I haven't talked to and started saying how great this idea was to create this space for first gen students. So we were established officially as a club in January 2023. So what we've done so far, our decodifying journey, as I like to say. So one of the first thing I mentioned was step one. So it's a board exam that we have to take in after our first 2 years to continue on into clerkship. And Dr. Mujri, who was our cognitive learning specialist, who was also our faculty advisor for First Gen in Medicine, led this talk just to teach us what step one is, how to prepare for it, since it is so cumulative over the span of 2 years, ways to tackle that, and also the logistical, how to financially afford, test prep, the actual exam itself. So little logisticals like that, and also just for a space for students to talk about their frustrations and share any tips that they have throughout this process. Another event that we did was creating the survival guide. So kind of revolving around the same theme, sharing tips, sharing space to talk about any sort of frustrations. The survival guide was created at the end of my first year, where we had a survey throughout to the whole class to share advice on ranging from how to study for certain organ blocks to where to get your tires fixed or where to go out for dinner. So it was a thick survival guide, and that's something that we hope to continuously update for incoming medical students, just so they aren't as confused as I was when starting medical school. And so another big topic we thought was helpful was creating a community. As I mentioned a couple times, creating that space and that networking has been so helpful. And just knowing that you're not isolated in your experiences. So we had these meet and greet events with first-gen students and faculty. This was one of the events. I think it was one of the parks where the first-gen faculty share their experiences in a less professional setting. And so everyone chatted freely and shared their experiences and shared any tips that they have as well. Another more formal event we had was a first-gen faculty panel, and that was done on campus where students brought in any questions they have regarding like careers or any tips, and the faculty shared their experiences on how to succeed with our first-gen background. And intersectionality. And so I was actually really glad that this was the topic for this summit. Throughout these planning, we found that it was not as simple. We all came from different backgrounds, and it's great. That's created who we are. But what we also found was that these unique perspectives gave us either privilege or added barriers to success. And that varies throughout. There's a wide spectrum, and having a one fits all sort of support didn't feel right as we were prepping for these events. So what now? So recent efforts by the College of Medicine's Diversity, Equity, and Belonging Office. It's also by Dr. Gilbert. She's also one of our faculty advisor for first gen in medicine. She created this platform for different identity-based student groups to collaborate more effectively. So what this entails was clubs can share different events that are coming up, so people either won't be double booked and they can go to all the events, or clubs can collaborate on certain events and share those resources so that students can attend them and gain more of those knowledge. And so I think collaborations has been a key way to sort of gather different groups and help out people from different backgrounds as well. And I just wanted to highlight a little bit for the current leadership. So they've been continuing to decodify the hidden curriculum, as I mentioned, and also this other event that's happening this week, actually, intro to the OR. So introducing students to these professional settings that many of us did not have that coming in. So it's been great. And in terms of the future, so I was mentioning we all have these different unique experiences, and having this one go-to resource to cover this wide spectrum of experiences didn't seem adequate. And I think something that could be a first step is to understand what those unique experiences are. And one way we're thinking is just through research. Um, so gathering those information, seeing what those weak spots are, and tailoring the educational supports for those weak spots. So that's something I'm really passionate about and hopefully to see in the future. So these are in the works. And that's it. So thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you, Taylor. That was a very concise, deep dive. As I said, I'm monitoring the chat in Whova. Unfortunately, it appears we don't have a chat available here in Zoom. So if you would like to ask any questions in the chat in Whova, or you should be able to unmute if you're comfortable just coming on microphone and asking any questions for Taylor. I'll just give the attendees a minute here to think, and if not, I have a couple of questions that may help generate some conversation. Okay, Taylor. So as I was listening to you share, and this shows the bias or my perspective in working on an undergraduate only campus. So I'm always thinking about that first year, second year student, brand spanking new college student who comes to us and says, I want to go to medical school. Can you think back to when that was your experience, and how do you even know where to even begin? It's even this many years into it for you, there's a lot of lingo and terminology that you used in your presentation that I think that brand new students would be completely lost on. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I apologize if I did use the lingo, and if there's any questions on those, feel free to just ask. So I think I keep going back to mentorship, and specifically, I think peer mentorship has been really helpful for me. In undergrad, I wasn't sure that I wanted to do medical school. I know I liked biology, and that was my major. And that was through, knowing people from a year above me that I was like, oh, okay, like this medicine sounds like a track that I would like. And throughout the pre-medical journey, they were the ones that sort of guide me throughout that process as well. And I was able to help other students that are younger than I was, to also go through the same process. And I think that's been translated to this year, or I mean, in medical school, just kind of like a ladder, helping the one after you and looking to the one that is ahead of you. So that's something that I find it helpful.
Would you describe yourself as an outgoing, like extroverted person?
Oh no, not at all. No.
So that's it, and I share with students a lot. I say, like, I know it's easy for me to say because I'm a talker. I don't even know that I would really say I'm extroverted, but I definitely like talking. I like talking to people. I like understanding other people's stories, and I just like that, conversation. So I get it that it's easy for somebody like me to tell a student, well, just jump in there, just go ask the questions, so can you say a little bit more about maybe reflecting on that, of how did you have the courage, or what did it take for you to jump in and this very organic mentorship that you developed with Jasmine, I think you said was her name, how did you find your way doing those sorts of things that may have been really challenging and uncomfortable?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question, because I've always thought you had to be really outgoing, really extrovert to do well in these fields. And that may be true to some degree, but also, there are people like me, like some of my mentors, who are not as extroverted. And so going to these events where there's sort of a one-on-one or at least a smaller group setting, I find is more comfortable to like ask questions and reach out, even after the event to ask for more advice. So finding settings that work for you, I think it's helpful. And there's people of different kinds in different fields. Um, and I still sometimes think that this is a disadvantage, but it's just kind of the theme of this talk. It's different backgrounds, different perspectives, but we can all get to the same success or wherever we want to go.
Thank you. Any other questions from participants? And it does appear you have the ability to unmute and even come on camera if you'd like. Okay, so how about another question, Taylor? Another session that I was in earlier, there was some conversation from panelists where they were sharing a bit about basically like cultural or even socioeconomic exposure, just things where they would find themselves in conversation because of the nature of the profession that they're pursuing. So I would imagine that medicine would be kind of similar, that you may find yourself in social settings, whether it's with physicians, where they have life experiences or access to experiences, maybe through even just financial resources. Does anything like that resonate for you, where you kind of found yourself out of your element?
Why don't you clarify what the question is?
So I'm just picturing a young like undergrad student who may be like socializing with physicians, people who are already at the end of the game or living the life, and how I know I can reflect even on my own experience as a first gen student, whether it was through like an internship or some sort of professional development opportunity or event or something that was going on. And maybe I didn't even know like what I should wear to the event, or there may have been, again, the lingo thing or conversations that were happening that, I just really had no idea what they were talking about based on where I came from, my experience in life. And if you had any sort of experiences like that and how did you navigate that?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
That's fine.
Yes, plenty. So I think for one, I didn't know what business casual dressing is before like starting med school. It's either like you're full in, I don't know, like button up with like, I don't know, a tuxedo or something that's like business, or it's just whatever your regular wear is. So figuring that out was hard. And also not only just figuring out like what is business casual, but what fits for you. And you don't feel like adding on to that imposter syndrome, right? Like not feeling I'm just in someone's outfit and I'm playing the part. So that was a process. I think that's something that really jumped out to me when you asked that question. And again, going back to the community, so being in a circle of friends, we're also like, what is this business casual thing mean? Or asking students who are 1 or 2 years above me, what are some like appropriate like clothing that you usually wear? Something that was also from the surgical diversity task force was they had a clothing drive where either students or faculty has donated business casual clothing to this event, and students and can come in and pick up outfits that they feel comfortable in. And that way they know like this is what the expectations are. So again, I feel like that community is so important just because we can share knowledge and also sharing like our uncertainty and knowing that when we share these uncertainty, it's not going to met with like, you should know this. And but like validation, I think, is so helpful. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That's great. That's really awesome. And it sounds like, especially since you shared that you're not so much of a extrovert, that like that's what this is for you, is really an opportunity to kind of give back. So that's really cool. I really admire that. Speaking of which, I'm curious of why, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about why you wanted to go to medical school. What maybe is the passion behind that for you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I liked bio, and that was something that I majored in college. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I do helping people is something that was on my mind. I liked, even though I'm not an extrovert, I do like talking to people one on one and helping them in any way possible. And what really like checked that box was when I was an EMT during my gap year. Um, that was a great experience. Hard, and so it was a hard experience, but um, having the ability to help someone in just even minor ways at the EMT level, um, and or just talking to them, that was something that was very rewarding for me. Um, so here I am.
Indeed, here you are.
Yep.
What about, one of the things that I think that we get kind of a bad reputation as first gen students is sometimes it's almost like a patronizing thing. Like we want to make sure first gen feel that they belong and that they're welcome. But I think sometimes the powers that be lose sight of our own individual, what we bring to the table. And so I'm curious of if you have, or if you could identify maybe some advantages that come with your identity. And speaking of the intersectionality, if there's multiple identities that you identify with that you think have been an asset in your journey in pursuing medical school.
Yeah. I think overall, I would say resiliency is a skill that I sort of rely on these different paths. I'm also an immigrant, and so that's, adapting is something that I have adapted to be. And I think with that, it's sort of like anything that's thrown at me, any sort of expectations, any sort of challenges. Uh, it's just finding a way, and through these multiple paths that we talked about, with mentorship, with community, finding a way somehow and overcome those challenges and achieve those success. And I know that's something that, like, being first gen is, we often talk about resiliency because that's something we just have to do. But yeah, I think that's the biggest part in this journey.
And not without challenges, I'm sure, as far as, you made that sound very smooth sailing, like because I'm sure you are very good at it. But can you share a little bit about when challenges or failures or setbacks, times that maybe you've made mistakes or not done as well as you expected or wanted? I think that what comes with our grittiness sometimes is just brutal expectations of ourselves. And then sometimes we have other external pressures, and, being the one at the front, being the leader definitely has its disadvantages. So can you share a little bit about maybe how you handle disappointment or failure?
Yeah. The one thing that come into my mind was um because I feel like we are so hard on ourselves and everything has to be perfect. But that's not the case as a learner. We are here to learn, to hear feedback, and to improve on those feedback. So I think when I first heard, and it wasn't like a horrible criticism or anything, but it was like, oh, you can do along the lines of, well, you can do something better, or do something in this other way next time. Um, it was a great constructive feedback, but I was very hard on myself for not being perfect. Um, I thought, like, man, I can't even do this thing correctly. How am I supposed to do X, Y, and Z in the future? Um, but we're learners. Like, we aren't supposed to be perfect, and that's something that I've sort of shifted my mindset to, and just being really open to those criticism or feedback, and that makes me better in the future. So mindset, I would say.
That's great. It sounds like you're still shifting it, telling yourself it's
Yep.
not criticism, it's feedback.
Yep.
So, still kind of realigning the way you describe that. So that's great. I want to give the audience another opportunity to think about if you have any questions, and otherwise I will ask one more question of Taylor. This is kind of aside from medical school, but thinking about like healthy coping skills. If you have, I think that we've all been through the college life and probably experienced various unhealthy coping skills, things that young people do when they're stressed and overwhelmed. And I'm just curious of maybe some things that you have found that are helpful and healthy and in a high stress kind of path that you're blazing.
Yeah. I I've always liked sports. So I think exercising, working out is my outlet. Sometimes it's hard when you have to go to clinic all day and you don't have time to do the one thing that helps you relieve stress. But yeah, I try my best, and that I think that's something that's helpful for me to have a healthy coping mechanism.
So the physical activity.
Hmm.
That was something that was out of my experience when I was an undergrad. I remember the first time I ever stepped foot in a gym, my roommate encouraged me to go. And I think sometimes that's one of the privileges that comes along with um, living a kind of holistic and healthy life. I know the keynote speaker spoke about having, I don't know, she didn't use these words, but maybe some of us who come from more of like a dysfunctional or chaotic kind of upbringing, we may not always get those messages of, it's good to go to the gym, or it's, good to eat healthy food, or drink water, some of those really get your sleep, some of those really basic health and wellness type of skills. Okay, so I want to ask the group one last time here. I don't want to hold out till 50 after just for the sake of doing it. I think Taylor covered a lot of information quickly. Are there any other questions or feedback or comments for Taylor? All right, Taylor, I would say that's safe to say that's about it then. So I want to thank you so much for your time, Taylor. This was really helpful and informative. In particular, I really enjoyed learning about your first gen medicine club. So I'm going to be checking that out. And just sharing from your authentic point of view and your resilience and your adaptability and being persistent. So I wish you well and on the continuation of your journey.
Thank you so much for today.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.